The hype around Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater has kicked up something I haven't really felt for a long time. I played Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater maybe more than 10 times. I've memorized its lines, which camos are where, what to do, so I was looking for something different to play before the arrival of Metal Gear Solid Delta. Long before we ever debated Resident Evil 2 Remake or Final Fantasy VII Remake, Konami already took a big swing at remaking a Metal Gear, not on PlayStation, but on GameCube. I'm Arcadenaut here, and today we are going to revisit this strange experiment in Metal Gear's history. That is, Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes. From its origins and its controversial gameplay to Matrix-style cutscenes, and why it remains locked away and rarely talked about. This is the story of Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes, the forgotten remake. Back in 2004, Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes promised to be the definitive way to experience Shadow Moses, the very first experience that defined a generation with its memorable characters and cutscenes. The Twin Snakes rebuilt the original with the mechanical backbone of Metal Gear Solid 2, with brand new cinematics, with a bold vision filtered through a different creative team. However, although it should have been the version everyone recommends today, it isn't. Instead, the Twin Snakes became a paradox, praised and criticized, respectful and renegade. It is the Metal Gear that's often left out of the conversation unless someone brings it up. Unless someone brings up its action-packed cutscenes full of slow motion and acrobatics of Solid Snake. In a time where PlayStation 2 was steamrolling and GameCube was looking for some prestige, the Twin Snakes were an excuse for older players to have a GameCube. With Silicon Knights remaking the first Metal Gear Solid, the idea was to rebuild the original with a modern engine and a new production philosophy. Imagine Shadow Moses rebuilt with the tech of Metal Gear Solid 2, smooth controls, higher fidelity graphics, new cinematics, with Hideo Kojima himself agreed to oversee the project as a producer, but not as a director. Instead, the remake's creative direction was made by Silicon Knights, and for cinematics, Nintendo brought in Japanese action film director Ryuhei Kitamura, who is known for his hyper-stylized action with exaggerated movements, impossible-looking stunts, and cinematic flair. From the start, you can realize that Kojima's grounded espionage tone meets Kitamura's action-packed, exaggerated style. From day one, Twin Snakes was already shaping up to be something very different from what players remembered. Take Metal Gear Solid 2's mechanics, first-person aiming, tranquilizers, grabbing and dragging the gods, ledge hanging, locker hiding, the whole stealth vocabulary as well as re-recorded performances. Twin Snakes was not a simple reinterpretation, but a whole new experience. If you have never played the first Metal Gear Solid, here is what you need to know. The year is 2005. A remote nuclear disposal facility on Shadow Moses Island in Alaska has been seized by a rogue Special Forces unit called Foxhound. They have gone rogue, taken hostages, and an armed Metal Gear unit called Rex, a bipedal, walking, nuclear-capable tank. Their demand is the remains of Big Boss and a ransom that could destabilize global security. And if denied, they will launch a nuclear strike. With the clock ticking, the Pentagon called back a retired soldier, Solid Snake. Snake is pulled from his quiet life and sent to infiltrate the base alone, armed with nothing but his training, his instincts, and the support of a codec team back at HQ. Inside Shadow Moses, Snake encounters Foxhound's elite members, each testing Solid Snake in different aspects. From the legendary Revolver Ocelot to memory card reading Psychomantis who breaks down the fourth walls, Sniper Wolf with its thrilling showdown, and Liquid Snake, who acts as the leader of this terrorist group. Along the way, Snake meets allies who become central to the series, from Meryl Silverberg to Otacon, the scientist who is horrified to see his invention used for war. All these characters carry an importance in Metal Gear Solid universe. Even if you enter the series with Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, Metal Gear Solid, or in this case Twin Snakes, should be one of the titles you must definitely revisit. However, whether playing the first game's remastered version or the Twin Snakes, it is up to you. Even though Hideo Kojima acts as the producer and Twin Snakes is remade by Silicon Knights, the ambience feels familiar. Shadow Moses is still there, but once you pick up the controller, it is obvious that this isn't the same game. As Twin Snakes overlays Metal Gear Solid 2's entire gameplay system on top of it, it enables Snake to shoot in first person. He can grab and choke guards, hide their bodies in lockers, hang from ledges, use tranquilizer dots, and even shoot out cameras with pinpoint accuracy. The mechanics of Metal Gear Solid 2, this also means the AI's response, their point of view, they are all enhanced and improved. Although many find Twin Snakes easier than the original Metal Gear Solid experience, I believe it takes some quiet time before you get used to Twin Snake's AI. How they react to Snake's footprints, the voice he makes, and how they start to corner you once you alert them. On paper, Twin Snakes sound marvelous. Basically, it is the modernization at its best, but here's the issue. The level design of Metal Gear Solid 1 was never built for these mechanics. The guard patrols at the start can either become harder with AI detecting your footprints and detecting you just seeing you easily, or the duel against Revolver Ocelot could become an easy encounter if you get used to the controls. Sadly, even the iconic encounters like Sniper Wolf lose some of their tension, with Snake's toolkit being too advanced for a battlefield built in 1998. At some points, what once felt like a claustrophobic spy thriller became a playground where Snake was too powerful. At some occasions, the DNA of the original's design, meaning careful tension, resource management, vulnerability, they were all altered. And this is exactly where the debate begins. Some find Twin Snakes as laughably easy or a wrong treatment, while for some, Twin Snakes was improving the gameplay. Notably, one of the biggest shifts in Twin Snakes shows up during the boss fights. On PlayStation 1, every encounter felt like a challenge. Ocelot's ricochet duel, Wolf Sniper standoff, Raven's Gatling ambush, or even the fight against Metal Gear Rex. With the new Metal Gear Solid 2 mechanics, most of those fights become rather cleaner, faster, and often easier. First-person aiming lets you punish Ocelot or Raven with precision. Sniper Wolf's duel can become easier with your guided missiles. Even the Rex fight, although still dramatic, it feels more like a puzzle you execute smoothly rather than a monster you try barely to survive. However, not every fight suffers. The duel with Grey Fox actually benefits from smoother movement and pacing. But in the end, if you grew up wanting the first Metal Gear Solid experience to be less fussy, you will appreciate it. But if you grew up loving the old fights because they were fuzzy, because they demanded you slow down and feel small, you will notice what's missing in the Twin Snakes experience. In the original Metal Gear Solid, cutscenes were restrained by PlayStation hardware. They were simple, grounded, but effective. Uniquely cinematic through clever camera work. Snake was a veteran soldier, not a superhero. However, the Twin Snakes carry the absurd flair of Metal Gear Solid series. Or, let's not call it absurd, but let's prefer the term exaggerated. The cinematics go full action anime. They are cleanly shot, kinetic, and unashamedly heightened. You can feel the pleasure of the craft, the way the camera drifts with a kick, the sense of weight in a slow-mo pivot, the choreography of bodies in space. If you wanted Metal Gear to visually match the myth of Solid Snake, it is all in place. Now let's talk about the other side of the coin, the infamous over-the-top cutscenes made by Kitamura, whether it be Snake flipping over the rockets, Grey Fox slicing bullets, that whole Matrix aesthetics. The common story is that this was all director Ryuhei Kitamura going off the rails. However, it was Kojima that handpicked Kitamura specifically for that style. Kojima wanted cinematic flair that went far beyond the PlayStation 1's limitations. In fact, early drafts of the cutscenes were more faithful to the original, but Kojima himself personally told Kitamura to dial them up even more. Not only that, but alongside Hideo Kojima, even Shigeru Miyamoto had direct involvement in the production, as both of them liked the idea of Snake being portrayed with super soldier spectacle. However, even fans who defend Twin Snakes roll their eyes at Snake missile jumping or Grey Fox's Matrix-like scenes. But when you zoom out, it fits the trajectory of Metal Gear as a whole. By Metal Gear Solid 3, you got the Pain doing the battle dance routines with beats, or by Metal Gear Solid 4, you got hyper-dramatic CQC flips and Raiden's battle against Vamp. Basically, Twin Snake's style doesn't feel that far removed from where the series went. It just landed on a setting many players wanted to keep more restraint. And I believe Kojima would have gone even further if the Twin Snakes were made nowadays with Kojima's current vision. But at the end, Metal Gear's tone has always been about impact and friction. A soldier in a sci-fi world who still bleeds, limps, shivers and makes mistakes. Metal Gear Solid 1's original cutscenes pulled off tension with subtlety, low-tech trickery and restraint. They are cinematic without being cartoonish, but Twin Snakes blows that restraint. For some, this style trait feels like a betrayal of what made Metal Gear Solid 1's drama so special, but for others, the trait is simply entertaining. Finally, Snakes moves on a screen like the legend in your head. So why did Resident Evil Remake become the definitive RE1, but Twin Snakes didn't replace PlayStation 1 Metal Gear Solid? First of all, Resident Evil Remake redesigned itself to fit its new mechanics, Crimson Heads, defensive items. Basically, the entire game was rebalanced around the new systems, but when you look at Twin Snakes, it ported a new toolkit into old layouts without the same ground-up adjustments. It modernized the feel without rethinking the structure. So the game leans easier, louder and less tense where the original was stout. Well, there is also the topic of availability where Twin Snakes stayed locked to GameCube with no HD port, no collection, no modern re-release. That means if you don't own the hardware, well, your only way of experiencing Twin Snakes is through emulation or maybe on Nintendo Wii. Meanwhile, PlayStation 1 Metal Gear Solid has just received a remastered treatment for Discovery, so it keeps reclaiming the play this first throne by sheer access alone. On the other hand, culturally, Twin Snakes became a footnote people argue about rather than an entry point that people recommend. It is not that it's awful, but it never become canonical. When fans make lists for newcomers, they say play the PlayStation 1 original or go for the Master Collection. So sadly, Twin Snakes is a curiosity, a fascinating, unique, and entertaining alternate experience. However, still, Twin Snakes offer mechanical smoothness, meaning that if the PlayStation 1 controls were a barrier for you, Twin Snakes is a godsend. Whether it's the first-person aim or the Metal Gear Solid 2 movement, they all turn the campaign into a flow state. Or if you're just looking for a deeper experience in gameplay, Twin Snakes offers holdups, lockers, strengths for a creative stealth gameplay. It is a different experience, full of satisfying mechanics and sequences. Personally, there is no way I can ignore the fourth wall breaks that are even in a weirder tone than the original, with Psycho Mantis appearing, Hideo Kojima and Yoji Shinkawa's portraits laughing at the player. The spirit of Kojima's oddball humor, those quirks, make it a recognizably Metal Gear experience. That means, if you approach Twin Snakes as a parallel telling, what if someone restaged the same story like a movie in 2004, it makes easier to appreciate. Not as a replacement, but as a companion piece that reveals how delicate Metal Gear Solid 1's tone and tension really are. There is no real evidence Kojima disliked Twin Snakes, but in fact, the Twin Snakes had the changes that would fit Kojima's Hollywood cinematic style. Kojima wasn't the director, but he was involved, and many of the most controversial choices, from the cutscene flair to the voice acting direction, they all came from Kojima. If anything, the disappointment came more from the fanbase, not Kojima himself. I believe it's important to frame that disappointment clearly. For many fans, the problem wasn't just the action movie cutscenes or the easier gameplay. It was that Twin Snakes lost the tone that made Metal Gear Solid 1 iconic, where the PlayStation 1 game felt like a taut spy thriller, where the GameCube version felt more like a flashy action reel. And for a series so defined by its identity, tone matters just much as its plot. Looking back at Metal Gear Solid the Twin Snakes, I don't see a failure. I see an experiment. It was ambitious, it was daring, and it wasn't afraid to be different. It modernized Metal Gear Solid 1 with smoother mechanics. It amplified Snake into a cinematic superhero. And it offered a whole new way to walk the halls of Shadow Moses. And that's why I felt like Twin Snakes is worth talking about now. Maybe we'll have it someday on Nintendo Switch 2, or maybe in a different way, who knows? So, I will leave it to you. What do you think? Was Twin Snakes a forgotten mistake, or was it simply misunderstood? Did it deserve the quiet shelf it ended up on, or does it deserve to be named among the must-play Metal Gear titles? As always, thank you for watching today's video. If there is any other title that you wish me to delve further, be sure to share them by the comments below. Any humble support through Patreon and YouTube join is really appreciated, and I will see you soon by my next video.